Welcome! Today, we're going to unpack a really core concept in Christian thought, the Holy Spirit. We're drawing from the text, the Spirit who is with us, to explore this idea of how God can be present in the world, especially after Jesus was no longer physically here. So let's just dive right in with the big question the source material puts on the table from the get-go. Think about it. If God is invisible, how can anyone possibly know him or build a real relationship? It's a huge question. You see, for the disciples, this wasn't some abstract philosophical problem. They had the answers standing right in front of them. For them, seeing Jesus was seeing God. Simple. But that created a massive new problem. The one tangible, visible connection to God they had was about to vanish. What on earth were they supposed to do next? But Jesus wasn't just going to leave them hanging. The text points to this crucial promise he made. This wasn't some plan B. It's presented as the absolute core of God's plan to stay connected with humanity, forever. This promise, right here, it sets the stage for everything else we're going to talk about. It was meant to tackle the disciples' fear and confusion head-on, pivoting from a physical presence to something entirely new. And their reaction was, well, it was completely human, wasn't it? They were losing their guide, their teacher. Their whole roadmap to God the Father was walking away. You can just feel their panic. They were totally and completely lost. So, let's get into the identity of this promised successor, this figure that the text calls another comforter. Who, or what exactly is this new presence that's meant to take Jesus' place? The original word used is bosa. Now, this word means comforter, sure, but it's also got the sense of being a counselor, a helper, someone who's right there with you. And here's the really fascinating part. The source highlights, Jesus himself was the first comforter. That's why this new presence is called another one. It's not a replacement, it's a continuation of the same job, just in a totally different form. And this chart just lays out the difference perfectly. It's actually a huge upgrade. Jesus' physical body could only be in one place at one time, but the Spirit is described as being totally unlimited, able to be with every single believer everywhere, all at once, forever. Okay, so how does this idea of an ever-present God actually work? Well, the source explains it through the concept of the Trinity. Now, this is where things can get a little mind-bending, but it's absolutely central to the whole idea. So the source describes God existing as three distinct persons. You have the Father, who is God in heaven. You have the Son, Jesus, who is God on earth, in the flesh. And then you have the Holy Spirit, who is God with us and even in us. And here's the absolute crucial point. Even though the text describes three distinct persons, it's emphatic that they are all one single being, God. We're not talking about three separate gods. It's one God, expressed in three ways. The source itself is super direct and honest about this. It presents the Trinity not as some brain teaser you're supposed to solve, but as a fundamental truth of faith you just have to accept. It's framed as something that's just bigger than our human minds can fully wrap around. And this is the ultimate payoff of that promise from Jesus. According to the text, the Holy Spirit brings to life what's described as God's original dream, to literally live with humanity. The idea here is that sin broke that connection, but Jesus fixed it, paving the way for the Spirit to come and actually take up residence inside people. So, what's the primary job of this indwelling Spirit? Well, the text gives it a very specific title that pretty much explains its main role, the Spirit of Truth. Now, a really clear line is drawn here. The text argues that the Spirit's presence isn't something that's just universally available for anyone to tap into. From an outside perspective, without faith, the Spirit is basically invisible and unknowable. To really drive this point home, the source makes a pretty bold claim. It says a person, no matter how smart, could read the Bible 1,000 times over, but without the Holy Spirit actually switching on the light, so to speak, real belief is impossible. It would all just stay as intellectual head knowledge, never becoming actual faith. And this leads to a fascinating flip in logic. We might think that you have to work up some faith to earn the Spirit's presence. But this text says it's the complete opposite. The very fact that a person can believe in Jesus is presented as the definitive proof that the Spirit is already there, already at work inside them. This is why, the text argues, the disciples were able to so accurately remember and write down Jesus' words and actions years later when they wrote the Gospels. The Spirit of truth is described as being like a perfect divine memory jogger, making sure the truth of Jesus' message was preserved. So, to bring it all together, the text portrays the Holy Spirit as the direct answer to Jesus having to leave. It's not a lesser substitute. It's an eternal, internal guide that acts as a helper, shines a light on the truth, and is the very thing that makes faith possible in the first place. And this leaves us with one last thing to chew on, a thought that comes directly from the text's own logic. It's kind of a spiritual chicken and egg question, really, that gets to the heart of faith and experience. Does a little spark of the Spirit have to come first to allow belief? Or does trying to believe somehow open the door for the Spirit? It's a question that sits right at that mysterious intersection of God's action and our response.